When it comes to towing, seeing is believing. That's why Chevy Truck's advanced camera technology offers up to 8 available cameras for 14 unique views, so you can focus on the view that really matters. Chevrolet, together let's drive. Learn more about Chevy Trucks at Chevy.com. Safety or driver assistance features are no substitute for the driver's responsibility to operate the vehicle in a safe manner. Read the vehicle owner's manual for important feature limitations and information.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our Quick Publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Rivals, this pre-season series that we're doing, diving into the top 6 in the Premier League and assessing what shape they're in ahead of the new campaign. And this week we'll be diving into the never dull world of Chelsea Football Club, discussing how new boss Maresca has been faring, the current size of the club's inflated young squad, and what fans' expectations are ahead of the new season. And joining me to shed light on all of these topics and more, I'm happy to welcome on Tom Overend from the Chelsea Social. Welcome, Tom. Good to speak with you again.
Good to speak to you, mate. Lots of football to look forward to.
Yeah, just saying, like us podcasters, dusting off the cobwebs ourselves, having gone through a bit of a pre-season routine. I'm back in the gym, trying to get sharp, at least I can sort of prepare myself mentally, emotionally, spiritually for more football. It feels like it wasn't a long time ago that obviously the Euros ended. We were just chatting before we hit, sort of went live, really just talking about pre-season and how much or how little we tend to engage in that, and we'll perhaps talk a little bit more about that as we get underway. But I wanted to ask you first, I'm sure you don't necessarily want to, but cast your mind back to the end of last season, and just before any decisions were made off the pitch. I think it's important to say that, just at the end of the final game of the season, to give me what your thoughts were on the campaign, how it was ending, and then I suppose we can move into sort of what you thought the work ahead needed to be. But yeah, just your thoughts. Once that final whistle went on the final game of the season.
Sure. So, I mean, top 6 was kind of what I was hoping for and expecting last season. I mean, a lot of Chelsea fans seem to have this view that we have a God-given right to be top 4 every season. I thought, coming off a campaign where we'd finished 12th, we'd had a really horrific campaign. We had shown improvement. We'd gone from really not laying a glove on any big side to coming in the top 6, putting in 2 great performances against City, a good performance at home to Liverpool on the opening day, beating Manchester United for the first time in, I think it was 7 years. Again, putting on a good performance against Arsenal at home, beating Tottenham home and away. So in that sense, it was kind of what I expected. We came off the end of the campaign with 5 straight Premier League wins to propel us from, the bottom half, I think, with about 10 games to go, up to 6th place. So all in all, I was happy. And I was at that point thinking we probably got position in the Europa League. Then, of course, the best laid plans of Manchester United came and ruined those in the FA Cup final. But all in all, it was kind of about par, albeit like I had concerns about the coach tactically. Although he was beginning to improve in that regard, I thought by the end of the season. The players were happy, and it felt like we had a squad that we were beginning to connect to a little bit more.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned those sort of tactical questions you had around the coach, and I think, one word that has been missing, obviously, from Chelsea over the past couple of seasons has been that word stability, in terms of, of course, all the issues around the ownership and the takeover, and then the off the pitch sort of footballing infrastructure. Is it in place? Is it not in place? The managers, of course, coming in and then being sort of sacked, and a lack of continuity for the players, and of course a lack of continuity in terms of the squad continuing to grow, and a huge squad of a number of really talented players, but quite hard to foster all of that into a tight-knit team, and I suppose land upon what is the best sort of 11 players to be out there. And you mentioned Pochettino. I think from the outside looking in, it seemed as though there are quite a few questions around him and his, as you say, tactical approach with the players at his disposal. So again, from the outside in, similar to what you were saying, towards the end of the season, it looked like, okay, things have been stable for a little bit here now. Seems to have landed upon a group of players that he likes. The players seem to be responding to each other and finding a little bit more rhythm as well. You mentioned the results, the positive end to the season. And so then, we'll talk about what came next, but just first, those tactical sort of concerns you had about the manager, what were they sort of throughout the season in terms of what you saw from Poch?
Sure. So, I saw the football as being quite outdated. It was a very traditional kind of 4-2-3-1. All the build-up was done with quite a wide back four that concerned me, because it's just not the way that the big sides play these days. And the best sides play. We had a problem with playing out. I don't think we were particularly good at it. And I think that defensive build-up structure kind of contributed. We would very often get caught on counter-attacks. We weren't particularly well sort of orientated to deal with that. And it all kind of came from those things. We had a very good goal-scoring season, it is worth saying, but we had a much more difficult season defending. I think it was our worst Premier League defensive record ever, or at least in about 20 years. And that's kind of where the cracks of it came from. Tactically, it just felt to me like he was going through the motions, just playing a very simple brand of football, and just not one that was really suitable. It wasn't your sort of Pep Guardiola, keep the ball 60-70% possession and press when need be. It wasn't that. And nor was it a kind of Jurgen Klopp perfected kind of rock and roll, let's play quickly, but actually with a top-class defence behind it, so that it wasn't all kind of chaos. Because, Liverpool, if anything, you won't struggle to break down low blocks. Low blocks were a constant theme last season that we just could not break down. So those were my concerns. And just to say, I think it got more positive when Pochettino built up with a back three, built up with a 3-2, with a Marc Cucurella inverting into the midfield, made it a much better shape, and actually ultimately got us in a position where we were able to dominate games a lot more, I felt.
Yeah, you mentioned that positive end to the season, and things perhaps coming into place a little bit more tactically. So when the decision was made, not too long after the season, of course, that Pochettino would be parting ways with the club. What was your initial reaction? And maybe sort of then tell me sort of how you're feeling now. We can obviously talk about the appointment that the club decided to make to replace him, but again, completely from a fan looking at the outside in, it looked like the last thing the club needed. It looked like they were finally sort of finding a little bit of rhythm, as you mentioned, sort of tactical questions being worked out, players responding, gelling, a bit more unity. What was your reaction?
I wasn't ultimately surprised.
Okay.
I'll start with that, because Pochettino, even though the results got better, was very weird in press conferences, was saying stuff like, it's not just the club. I have to decide if I want to do another season here. And I think there were kind of murmurings about a kind of lack of complete unity behind the scenes, not so much between Poch and the squad, but between Poch, the sporting directors, kind of from there, the owners as well. I think there was a bit of a concern that Poch at times was playing it a bit safe. I mean, for instance, I remember us thumping Everton, I think it was 5-0 from memory. And a lot of fans, but I think also others were disappointed perhaps that Poch wasn't implementing academy players or bringing on younger players. And it just felt that it was not completely sort of solved. It wasn't the kind of, great, we're doing a lot better, now let's move on and go on to the next level under Poch. It just didn't feel that way.
No, sure. So despite what it may have looked like from the outside, that things weren't all together. So then when the club actually ultimately makes the decision to appoint Maresca, what was your opinion on him as a coach based on what you'd seen at Leicester? The previous campaign, of course, that he oversaw successfully. Just your reaction to his appointment as a coach, but then also maybe be interested to hear your thoughts about how much of a departure you think he presents tactically in terms of his philosophy.
Yes, so first I'll say on that actually, and it relates to Pochettino in a kind of different way, that Maresca has been given a 5-year deal. He's clearly the guy that the club have brought in and believe he's going to be the long-term guy at Chelsea. Now, the best laid plans, right? I'm in no way saying he's going to last 5 years, but I think it is a kind of show of intent from the club.
How long was Potter's deal? I'm not trying to be facetious here. How long was Potter's deal?
Potter's was 5 as well.
Okay. Potter's was shorter, wasn't it?
Potter's was 2.
Okay.
So I was just going to say that I think looking at it now, Pochettino was kind of a bit of an admission of guilt from the club, as if to say, made a mistake putting Potter in on 5 years when we hadn't built the infrastructure for that. Now in 2024, we have a proper sporting team. We have a multi-club side. We have people that liaise with the multi-club side. Loan systems, things like that weren't there in 22 under Potter and 23. So just worth saying that it's, and I'm no way saying the club are necessarily right, but it's just a little bit of a kind of window into how they're thinking. Pochettino, I think, was brought in as a stopgap, an experienced coach while the club were building up behind the scenes. And it apparently very much left amicably. They kind of shook hands and said, kind of, my work here is done. It wasn't a kind of ugly departure. It wasn't a kind of... I don't believe Poch has any bitter words to the club. I could be mistaken on that, but all the comms communicating his departure, he was quoted on those. So it's rare that you won't. On to Maresca, I mean, he was not a first pick of mine. I understand the club's vision with regards to him. They clearly, a bit like perhaps Bayern or even actually Liverpool in a funny way, coach first and foremost that fits the club's philosophy.
Who was your first choice out of interest, Tom?
It was tough at that stage because all the names that came out early were Maresca, Kieran McKenna. I'm trying to go back to the names that were available now because it feels like literally like years ago. It was like Maresca, McKenna, and people like that. I was looking quite keenly at some of the top La Liga coaches. I know there was the likes of Pimienta was doing very well. I thought Seb Hones was a very, very good choice that Chelsea should have been looking at as well. The reason I had concerns about Maresca was he had, in my opinion, the best squad I think I've ever seen in the Championship and did well, won them the league, but I think that's minimum expectation for that squad, to be honest. And that's not to say it's not an achievement, but if they hadn't gone up automatically at the very least, there would have been big questions. And so I looked at it, I kind of looked at it through that lens. He was brought in clearly as to be the kind of tactical guy that can build a system. And I think what they would have seen at Leicester was his 3-2-4-1, very much Pep school football. Chelsea have a couple of ex-Man City coaches and sports staff in now. And I think it's very clear that they're looking at the City model and want to build their own project on kind of along those lines, albeit with a bit more kind of focus on multi-club and a bit more focus on those kinds of things. And for that, they clearly saw Maresca as being the best fit. Now, on reflection, I think if that's their goal, he was probably a better fit than Kieran McKenna. Is he, is that association with Man City alone going to be enough? And 1 year at Leicester, we'll have to see. Other clubs have done it, like Real Madrid with Zinedine Zidane, but it does appear to me to be a very risky move once again by the owners that could ultimately blow up.
And in terms of like Maresca and his approach and the departure from sort of what came beforehand, again, maybe just thinking about what you'd seen of his tactical approach and the players that he now will actually have to work with. How much of a change are you expecting to see? Obviously, we'll go into talking about pre-season in a little bit, but how much of a change from some of the tactical approaches you saw last season are you expecting?
So I actually think that it'll be very much building off the foundations that Pochettino laid in the final 5 games, those final 5 to 6 games. It was at half-time against Aston Villa where we came up and started building in a 3-2. And I think actually, in a very inadvertent way, Maresca's football is going to kind of be launched off that foundation. We've seen through pre-season this very much one inverted fullback, 2 progressive 8s, 2 wingers, but also very much wide players, not as much wingers as in a kind of traditional 4-3-3 or something. So in a kind of formational sense, it'll be fairly similar. But I think the kind of positional play is going to be a hugely new focus. I don't think Poch hugely played along those lines. And so on that basis, that would be the way I'd look at it. I think he's very much looking at it through dying by his principles. I'm not sure he'll be hugely pragmatic. I don't think he'll be quite Maurizio Sarri, dogmatic, kind of, I have one way, but I think there'll be a very, very overarching system where he'll only make certain tweaks to it. But, we are beginning to see that identity, and I would say it's a much, much, much more advanced version of the football we were playing in the final 5 games last campaign.
Hey, this is Buck Joffrey, and if you are a high-paid professional looking to break free from the golden handcuffs, listen closely. Now, I went from being a busy surgeon to a real estate investor with over $2 billion in assets under management. And now I'm on a mission to share the wealth-building secrets of the ultra-rich with you. Imagine legally paying little or no taxes, shielding your assets from risk, and investing in distressed real estate during the current real estate meltdown. Did you know, for example, that right now, the high interest rates have created a rare chance in the market to buy discounted apartment buildings? By seizing this moment, you can position yourself for massive gains when rates inevitably drop. And I'll tell you what, that is exactly what we do in my podcast community together. Don't settle for conventional wisdom. Let me show you how the economy works and how you can use financial education to achieve true financial freedom. Tune into the Wealth Formula podcast with me, Buck Joffrey, and take control of your financial destiny.
This podcast is sponsored by Ramp. Are you the decision maker in your company? Consider this. For the first time in decades, there's a better option for a corporate card and spend management platform. Meet Ramp, the only corporate card and spend management system designed to help you spend less money so you can make more. With Ramp, you get full visibility into your company's spending and control who spends what with each vendor. Ramp software collects and verifies receipts instantly to save your team valuable time. Ramp automates data entry and routine tasks with automated approvals, expense categorization and bill payments, time-consuming tasks. Which means you'll stop wasteful spending and close your books in hours instead of days. Businesses that use Ramp add up to 5% to their bottom line the first year. If you're a decision maker, adding Ramp could be one of the best decisions you've ever made. Get $250 when you join Ramp for free. Just go to ramp.com/easy. Ramp.com/easy. RAMP.com/easy.
Cards issued by Sutton Bank and Celtic Bank, members FDIC. Terms and conditions apply.
I don't need a VPN. I've got nothing to hide. Ha. This is what I used to tell myself before I hooked up with LibertyShield.com. Not only is my home internet now fully encrypted, but I can now access all the websites I want, whenever I want, and do so from absolutely anywhere. As a Liverpool fan, I love to know I can now watch every match, regardless of whether it's on UK TV or not. My Liberty Shield VPN makes sure nothing is blocked and guarantees me super fast streaming speed throughout that match. You can get connected right now with their software package, which includes a 48-hour no-obligation free trial and instant access to their apps for Apple, Android, Fire TV, PC, Mac and Android TV. Or go a step further like I have and get one of their pre-configured VPN routers. These small but powerful devices allow you to easily connect every device in your home to VPN, making it the perfect solution for smart TVs, Mac boxes and games consoles. Visit LibertyShield.com today and use coupon code AIVPN25 to get 25% off at checkout.
And looking at the squad at the end of last season, and based on what you'd seen throughout the campaign, again, it feels obviously lots of players have come into the club. You'd imagine some would be departing, some are in terms of maybe on loan. Again, lots of young talent there. Not everybody can play, and you do want to land on a more solid rotation of players that are going to be playing week in, week out. But what were your thoughts on sort of the areas of the squad that maybe required some surgery, or what the priorities needed to be in the window, and how well do you think Chelsea have addressed those as of yet?
Sure. So at first, I think a number 9 is hugely important. Nicholas Jackson played very well last season, I thought, or at least had a very promising first season, but we didn't really have anyone behind him. Armando Broja was always likely to probably leave the club this summer. And then Nkunku only had probably about a handful of games towards the end of the season where, he showed a lot of promise, but hasn't really fully showed where his best position is. So I think a number 9 is of huge importance to start with. And then I actually think after that, a goalkeeper was first priority. I mean, Georgi Petrovic is good. I think he was very much, though, brought in to be a number 2. And the club were kind of uncomfortable with him being the first pick. I know Petr Cech on Monday Night Football did a really good goalkeeping segment, kind of saying, this guy's good, but he's not an elite level goalkeeper, based off, things like positioning, handling, things like that. So that's the first thing. So those 2 areas would be the very, very important positions I would have prioritised. And the club have done some stuff. They brought in Marc Guiu from Barcelona, La Masia graduate, for his release clause of €5 million. Looked pretty promising in pre-season. Creating assists, looked like a really powerful centre-forward player, duelling with centre-backs. So that's a promising start, but I think the club need a more established number 9, which is why the kind of links with Osimhen are more to most fans' desires. I still have my doubts we'll get him. I think we won't pay any wages that he'll want, but Napoli clearly want Lukaku and are looking at a season-long loan for us to get Osimhen, perhaps with a buy clause at the end. So that would be a very sort of concrete step that would be great in terms of the club's movements. In goal, Chelsea have signed Philip Jorgensen from Villarreal. An academy grad, had 1 season, but very much, I believe, brought him for his play with the ball at feet and his distribution. Risky move, though, when the main goal of being a goalkeeper is to save shots and to very much stop the ball going in the goal. But it is obvious that in Maresca's system, a ball-playing keeper is needed. But there are clear doubts about the rest of his game. So that's the first thing I'd say. The club have then brought in some other players. For instance, Kin and Dewsbury Hall, brought in as part of a kind of PSR sort of swap deal. We've sent over Michael Golding, a youth player, to Leicester for about a 5 million fee. We bought Dewsbury Hall for, I think, 25 million. You know, you can see him in the attacking 8 positions in the Maresca system. They brought in Caleb Wiley, the left back. They brought in, and his name has forgotten me because he's a young player from Basel. I believe a right back as
Vega. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one. Yep, Vega. Not Gabby Vega.
Renato Vega.
That's the one. It's been a long day in the fade. But yes, so I mean, the club are definitely looking at building towards Maresca's system, and that's something that I'm very happy about. Are they perhaps filling in holes in the squad that are, in my view, are first priority? Not necessarily, but you know how Chelsea operate. We might bring in these youngsters to go out on loan, sell them for a profit, things like that. So hard to see exactly what these guys' roles are initially.
Absolutely. I think it's going to be a while until it all becomes clear. As you mentioned, some of the rumours around Lukaku's future and Victor Osimhen's future at the moment seem to be some of the hottest bits of gossip. I mean, it's been an interesting sort of month in terms of sort of the business that's been done by other clubs, or lack of business by, I mean, certainly Liverpool obviously haven't made any signings so far. And it's, interesting, coaches in different sort of situations, trying to get a feel for the squad that they have at their disposal, players returning late from these international tournaments as well, different tournaments. Of course, the Copa America was on as well. So it's going to be interesting to see just how well gelled everybody looks, to be honest, from the very first game, given that we're not far away from it. I wanted to turn briefly to off the pitch, because I think that's also been, of course, a real area that's been lots of disruption. It seemed a little bit like instability, if that's the word. I think off the pitch matters were also under the spotlight. And I wanted to ask you sort of like how you feel Chelsea are currently set up in terms of sort of their footballing infrastructure, and if all the positions and sort of the hierarchy of that infrastructure are now in place in a way which you're comfortable with.
Yes, so Chelsea's a really complicated business model.
It seems it. It does seem it, yeah.
And in my view, I mean, initially at least, I thought they brought in too many cooks. To be honest, I mean, they're all bringing in qualified people, but there were very many of them. So the structure kind of starts with Lauren Stewart and Paul Winstanley as the sporting directors. Very old, long-serving academy staff have now departed the club. Neil Barth, being the main one, and Joe Shields, who was brought in as a member of the recruitment team from Man City. He's now also going to lead the academy and lead that pathway into the first team. Maresca has brought in the likes of Willy Caballero and I believe 3 or 4 other first team staff. And I think what's going to be crucial is the linkage between the Maresca team, the sporting team, the academy, and also our multi-club network. So Strasbourg, who just brought in Liam Rosenia, really promising young coach from Hull, to lead that team, very much, on the clear instruction of playing the same way that Chelsea play. And he's made that very clear. I mean, Strasbourg have published a brilliant video on, Rosenia setting out his tactical stall for them. Lots of players of ours go out on loan to them now. Andre Santos being one, Angelo Gabriel another. It'll be how effectively those sort of 4 pillars of the club, I would say, work together, because I think the club recently have been compensating for a very poor first couple of windows under the Clear Lake ownership, which is why they felt they've had to sell Gallagher. They sold Mason Mount, although I think that's probably been a good decision based off of how things have panned out. Kai Havertz has gone, given that we got a great fee from Arsenal. And it's been very much a kind of rescue job from there. But what it has done is it's destroyed a lot of faith in the academy and about that pathway, because the club have been looking at pure profit. The Strasbourg links have had a lot of issues because the Strasbourg fans understandably don't like the fact that they feel like they're a feeder club. They're a historic club. They've just been brought up as a kind of cog in the Chelsea machine. So it'll be interesting to see how Liam Rosenior deals with that. And then there's been, the last two coaches, or at least under Pochettino, lots of problems between the manager's side and the sporting director side, and the selling of players, buying of players against the coach's will. Conor Gallagher being a very clear example of that under Pochettino. So for me, it's not so much have we got the right structure, because I actually think from what I read, other clubs are looking at sort of imitating our structure. It's about how well can we get that structure to work, and can there be sort of fewer clashes between each pillar? And they haven't got that right yet. But I think if they do get that right, they've got really qualified people in all of those. And I think the club can be set for a great future.
It's actually a wealth of talent. Again, sort of similar point to sort of what you've got in terms of your actual playing squad. But it's just a case of, can they all gel? Can everybody gel? Can everyone get push in the same direction? I think that's when you tend to see sort of the best results at any club, of course, no matter sort of how well set up they are. So you'll be interesting to see that as well. And you mentioned pre-season earlier, when I think before we started recording as well, we were talking about sort of the way in which, of course, a lot of online sort of fan engagement with football goes these days is you got to pick the most reactionary take you can possibly pick, even if you don't really believe it at all. Either you're super angry, or you're raging, or you're super happy, or you're super sad. It's all extremes. It can never be balanced. And pre-season is something that provides lots of opportunity for fans of different clubs, of men of a certain age, largely, to go online and have a go. So I imagine the 4-1 loss to Celtic wasn't the best for that kind of thing. I wanted to ask you how pre-season has gone so far, and just things that you've noticed so far. I know we're still early into that campaign.
Yes, so pre-season started late. I think that is worth saying. We've had 2 friendlies already, a 2-2 draw against Wrexham, and then a 4-1 defeat to Celtic. Both of those, though, against teams much, much more physically fit than us. I think both have their season starting before us. So worth saying, I mean, the defeat to Celtic wasn't ideal, but it was their 5th pre-season game. It was our second, and our second was 72 hours after our first. So you have to consider those things. And when a coach is implementing a new philosophy, players are going to make mistakes that look very, very silly. So defending in his own way, we conceded some goals that look really poor, but it's ultimately just teething problems for a new system, I think. Very much similarly, it's that kind of problem, playing out from the back. They've not fully got it yet. Robert Sanchez made a few pretty elementary mistakes, but it was never going to be there immediately. Pressing, the players are not all fully fit yet. And I think that showed in the kind of attempts to dispossess the opponent off the ball. So all of those things would suggest that, while it was a 4-1 defeat on paper, it's really not that big a deal. Things don't come overnight. I mean, fans were crying out for a more tactically astute coach and want attacking football. That doesn't come overnight. And it didn't come overnight under Klopp at Liverpool. It didn't come overnight under Pep at Manchester City. it was never going to come overnight at Chelsea under Maresca, and Maresca was always going to, unfortunately, come under fire for being inexperienced. And fans, again, I don't know how sincerely, saying, oh, I'm concerned because this guy's not experienced, doesn't know how to set up a team, and we're getting hammered by Celtic. I think that's a ridiculous point to make off 2 friendlies, but people go and make it.
Hey guys, it's Eddie Gibbs from Anfield Index here. I hope you're enjoying this podcast, and I'm sorry to call time on the show before it ends. In the current climate, it's tougher than ever before to offer podcasts for free. At Anfield Index, we produce over 75 free shows every month, which I'm confident is unparalleled in the LFC sphere. Whilst we'd love to offer everything for free, the production costs now make this impossible. That said, we don't want to follow the model of other channels and lock all of our content behind a paywall. So what we've decided to do is to continue offering every show for free, but cut that offering to 30 minutes on our longer shows. So to get all of our shows in full and enjoy the best of everything we have to offer, we really hope you'll consider supporting the channel and signing up at AnfieldIndexPro.com. For about the price of 1 cup of coffee, you'll get every podcast in full with 0 ads. You'll also get access to our LFC VIP community, where you can enjoy live podcasts, engage with our podcasters, and chat with other Reds in real time. So that website again, AnfieldIndexPro.com. Join today.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Nothing makes being outdoors better than having the right gear and the right crew. So here's an idea. Let Mountain Dew supply the gear and you bring the friends. Because when you buy specially marked multi-packs of Mountain Dew, you can collect points and earn epic limited edition outdoor gear. We're talking everything from custom Mountain Dew camp chairs and backpack coolers to exclusive Mountain Dew tents, fishing boats, and more. So buy Dew, collect points, get gear, and get outside with Mountain Dew outdoor gear.
Open to legal U.S. residents 18+, subject to program terms at dewoutdoors.com and 12/31/24, void or prohibited.